Hello everybody, Carol Garrison with Carol's Creative Escape. It is Monday, December 19th, and thank you so much for taking time out of your schedule to check out my video today. I've got a video card tutorial for you, and it's a fun little design that again will allow you to use a lot of that designer series paper that you may have in your storage area. I hope everybody's been having a good week. We got to spend a lot of time up here shoveling snow. Hi April, hope you're doing okay tonight. Have spent a lot of time shoveling in the last few days. We've had some wet and heavy snow. Now we're getting a lighter blowing snow, but it sounds like we're going to have another 4 to 5 days of that as well, along with some really cold temperatures. So I think I've got most of my Christmas shopping done. I'm hoping I can run out tomorrow and get the rest of it done before the snow hits, and then at the end of the week I'm going to have Cece with me for a couple days and no car, so I actually have to get it done tomorrow, I guess. So again, hope everybody's had a good week, and I am going to just jump in right away and get started on this card. It's a very basic card layout, but again, it allows you to use multiple designs from your designer series paper, and it helps me reach my goal of using up all of my designer series paper that I've got for this catalog year. So let's go ahead and get started. I'm going to flip you around and get you hooked up onto my other stand here. Just a moment. Okay, and I got to check and make sure you're showing up on my Facebook feed so that I know I'm in the right spot there. Yep, there's my shirt. Funny story, I was all set to go and then managed to drip dinner down the front of me. Anybody else have that issue? So I had to change shirts real quick before I went live here today too. Oh well, I don't think I'm alone in that. So anyhow, like I said, this card is one. I first saw this layout a while ago from another demonstrator by the name of Robin, and I'm not sure that I'm pronouncing her last name right, but I'm going to do my best, Robin Armbrecht. And she had a couple different layouts that she used using the same size squares and things that I'm going to share with you tonight. I am just focusing on one of those layouts because it was my favorite of the layouts that I saw with her. And it allows me to show off my stamps. It allows me to show off my designer series paper. And it's a card that is great kind of regardless of the occasion that you might be working with. And so that's kind of my style. I like to have multi-occasion cards that work well, use up my designer series paper, and also look great. Looks like you did a lot of work, but you didn't have to. So, hey Anne, thanks for joining me tonight. So this one is the one that I did a while ago, because you're going to recognize that as being some paper that is no longer available. This was from the last celebration that we had, I believe. But I liked the paper and I liked the layout, and I had kind of done this so that I could remember the card. So I just wanted to show you that's what it kind of looks like. This would be a good congratulations card, or you're doing something different in your world now, and it's a great day to start something new. All right, and then I made this with the He's the Man designer series paper, because again, great masculine card, and it works out lovely with this layer, or this layout. The big difference between these two is that I've actually got 3 layers. I've got the card base and then 2 more layers plus the squares. On this one, I've just got the card base and 1 layer of cardstock underneath it. And I found that as I did these two, I really liked that extra layer of color. And so when I made my third card, which is a Christmas themed card using the boughs of holly, I also included the 3 layers on here. So you can see how this is great for using up your designer series paper, those small bits and bobs of paper. I add a little sparkle on here by using some of that glimmer paper. And this card is so easy to make, and it's one that you can, if you need to make a lot of cards, it's a great card to do that with because you can prep everything ahead of time and do that assembly line production. So let's jump in and I will give you measurements as we go along here. I am using the that pretty Florets Designer Series paper, and I'm quickly trying to remember what it's actually called. It is the Fitting Florets Designer Series paper, and I am using polished pink as my base color with a little bit of evening evergreen on the second layer, and then basic white on that third layer. So let me just pull that in. Oh, before I do that, one other thing I wanted to just share with you too, as ways to detail this square. I used embossing powder here with the colored ink. So that's one technique that I used on this card. This one I simply stamped and didn't emboss, didn't heat emboss, didn't do anything like that. And then on this one, because I was using one of the die cuts from this Designer Series paper, I just used an embossing folder and added a little bit of texture behind this. So those are three different ways that you can add to that feature on the card. And I'm actually going to show you a fourth thing that you could do today as well on this next card. So to start with, what you want is a piece of 5.5 by 8.5 Designer Series paper, scored at 4 1/4. And then you will need a piece of, oops, that's an envelope. A piece of 4 by 5 1/4 for the inside of your card. And then for the front layer, and I want to make sure I've got the right piece here. Yep. On my evening evergreen, I'm using 4 1/8 by 5 3/8. And that way I get just that fine little border going around the card. And then the basic white layer is going to be 4 by 5 1/4. And so again, I can get that 1/8 inch border going around on my card. You will also need a piece of 2.5 by 2.5 cardstock. And then a piece of 2 1/4 by 2 1/4 on the basic white. And then the other thing that you're going to need is, as you choose the Designer Series paper that you're working with, for this particular card, you need 8, and I may have more than 8 squares here because I was just cutting them up to make cards. You need 8 pieces of Designer Series paper that measure 1 1/4 by 1 1/4. And you don't have to worry, because it's a square, you don't really have to worry about what the pattern is, because I am using the front and back. And so I can just rotate the direction if it's a little bit different on the back side. Don't worry about that. So you need 8 of those. And then I hand cut this image off of the same Designer Series paper. And then finally, I have a scrap piece of basic white paper that I already have heat embossed in color the word celebrate, because that's going to be part of my card as well. All right, let's go ahead and get started. The first thing that I want to do is stamp my sentiment on the inside of this card. And so I'm using the Framed Florets stamp set. And this one will be available. Currently it's available as part of a suite of products, although some of the pieces in that suite have already sold out. But you will be able to get this stamp set and the coordinating dies that go with it in the January catalog, the mini catalog, when it comes out. So I'm doing a celebrate, so I just want to do the wishes for a happy birthday on the inside of the card. And I do try to do as much of my stamping up front, simply to give it ample time to dry before I have to start adding it to my card pieces. Otherwise, then I don't run a risk of smearing. Now, you may have noticed I just kind of threw my stamp down onto my work surface here. I like to do that, especially with the photopolymers, because it tends to get them to be laying straight, no little curves or anything. Sometimes when I add them to my block with my hand, I'll get a little bit of a curve or a bend to it. So if I just put it on my desktop, and then I always put them on my blocks crooked, because then I focus on getting the stamp straight and not my block straight. Everybody has their own way of doing it. That's just my style. And I'm going to stamp this in the upper center of my card. Perfect. We'll set that aside so that ink can dry. And that is all the stamping that you're going to watch me do tonight. Let me just get that one cleaned off. All right. And then I love these photopolymer stamps that come with the images on the inside, so you can just stick everything down and know right away if you're missing any stamps. If you've watched any of my videos, you know I sometimes misplace my stamps or they get stuck on something else, and that's just an instant thing for me to find out what I'm missing, if I'm missing anything. All right, so the next thing we can do is then fold this card over along the score line. And I'm going to take my bone folder and just burnish that edge real quick. And then we're going to start the assembly process. That's how easy this card is. So I'm going to get my stamp and seal, and I will add it to the back of the Evening Evergreen. It's kind of a different combination, but I think you're going to see that it's going to work when you see the scraps of designer series paper that I went ahead and used. So I'm going to put that on here and just center it. So I should have just a narrow bold border on all four sides of my card. All right. And then the next thing I'm going to do is I like to actually keep this layer separate from that until I get everything assembled. And this is one of those instances where I am going to use the liquid glue. Sorry, I had to grab a sip of water here. I'm going to use the liquid glue, and the reason for that is I want to have the ability to move my images around just a little bit if necessary. And so using that liquid glue gives me the ability to be able to do that. All right, and then, so 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. I have 10 of these squares. You actually will need 8 of them, excuse me, for this card that we're doing. And I'm going to show you a couple tricks that I learned as I was putting these cards together for the first time. The first thing I'm going to do is just recommend that you lay out your different patterns onto your paper so that you can kind of see how things look as you're moving along here. And you're basically going to have 3 here, 3 here, and 4 on this side. And so I try to kind of alternate my patterns a little bit so that it's not all one color, that I'm using flowers or designs, you know, in different spots and stuff. Not sure that I like that piece, so I may go back to that one. And then we'll put that there, and I think I want this here so it's kind of balanced, and we're going to throw this piece here. So that way you can kind of play with your arrangement. Maybe we need to do that. Yep, I think I'm going to do that. And just play with that arrangement a little bit. And then what I found has worked for me when I'm putting these squares on, just to make sure that I get them straight, I start in this upper corner here, and I'm using, like I said, my liquid glue. Oh, I'm afraid it's going to burp if I squeeze too hard. It's got a little coating. Come on. Oh, good grief. I just used this right before I went live. There's just a little bubble of it caught. When that happens, and it will, especially if you haven't used it recently, never hold this over your project. Find somewhere safe where you can squeeze. Oh, see, now I loosen that cap up. I'm going to regret doing that too. No problem. No problem at all. I don't think I had my cap on tight after I loosened it up. See, this is why me and Tombo don't always get along, and I tend to use adhesives more. There, I just popped it on. All right, now let me make sure that it's coming out. There we go. Got it fixed. Crisis averted. And I don't have too much glue on my fingers. All right, back to regular programming. Here we go. So I put on, you don't need a lot of this. Don't get it real close to the edges because you don't want it blurping out off the corner. And then I flip this over, and I know that I want just 1/8 of an inch border. And so I'm able to do that with this first corner and get it square. Now, if it's not quite square, I have room to wiggle it around a little bit. All right, then the next piece that I'm going to put in place, I kind of set these off to the side so that I can keep the order going. The next piece that I'm going to put in is this one up here in this corner. And so, again, you know what? Yeah. I meant to use this one pink side, but I actually, when I first started planning it, this was the side I was going to use, but I actually like that darker color. So I'm changing my mind, and I didn't even know it. And I'll put this piece in basically in the same spot on the opposite corner. And that just allows me to kind of get my spacing going. And then I'll come back in and put this middle piece in. And the reason I do these two edge pieces first is I can center this middle piece pretty easily and not have to worry that my spacing is uneven or anything like that. So again, just add a little bit of this liquid glue. Make sure your pattern's going the right direction. And then you just want to center this in between those two other squares. And again, because you're using that liquid glue, you've got a little wiggle room to get things lined up correctly. All right, and then the next piece that I'm going to put on, you can probably guess, is going to be right down here. And so let's go ahead and add some glue to that. And again, just a slight border like that. And then I have a piece of tape there. I'll go ahead and add these two pieces. But again, as I'm putting the glue on these, I'm not going to press them down super hard because I do want to have the ability to move them around a little bit. So we're going to start just getting some general spacing, and we'll leave it like that. And I'll come in and do this. Oh, you know what? I wanted a blue piece. Did I want a blue piece here? Nope, I wanted this flower here. I'm right. All right. And so then this piece, so I want to just slide this one up just a titch. To get my spacing right. All right, and then I can slide this one here. Okay, and then I'm just going to put these two pieces in here. And I think because I've got that blue up here, I'm going to flip-flop these two around a little bit. So you can see how you can change this on the fly as you're working on it. You could do this with as many different patterns as you wanted, or you could duplicate, and I just did what I said I wasn't going to do. I want to put this corner piece in first. And that's so that I can get good spacing on that middle piece. So no harm done. I caught it in time. All right. And so we're going to put that there. Then we'll come back in with this piece and plop that in right there. All right, so now we've got our 1 1/4 by 1 1/4 inch squares bordered all around here, and we can assemble our focal point, which is this piece. So again, I'm going to take my seal. If you were going to stamp your sentiment right onto this basic white, you'd want to do it before you adhere. I am not stamping a sentiment on this, and so I'm going to go ahead and adhere it before I create, or before I add it to the card. I don't need to worry about that. That is not quite straight. You can tell just by looking at it. Okay, there we go. And then we will put some more seal on here. And remember, when you're using the seal, a light touch with that check mark keeps it from gumming up on you. And then we're just going to put this piece right in the center here, again keeping about 1/8 of an inch border all around that. And then I've cut this image out from one of the other pieces of designer series paper, and I actually want to pop this one up on dimensionals. So before I used colored embossing, heat embossing, I used regular ink, and then I used kind of just a die cut that came with the designer series paper. This time through, I am actually fussy cutting one of the images from the designer series paper and adding it to the front of the card. So there's lots of ways you can decorate the front of this card too. And I'm just going to put that. I want to make sure that it's not hanging too far off the edge, because I wouldn't want that getting folded up in an envelope or anything like that. And then I've got the Celebrate sentiment, and so I'm also going to pop that up onto dimensionals because I want it to be able to go over that part. And like I've done in the last couple of lives, I did do the use my Stamparatus so that I could stamp it in color first, and then stamp it with the Versamark, and then use clear embossing powder, and that way I get a little bit of shine and a raised edge to the sentiment. Hopefully I can catch that in the camera. Maybe you can see that. All right, and then to finish this card, well, finish the front of this card, again, I'm going to take my seal and do that light touch. If you hear the dog tags, Loki must have just come in from outside. Hi, Loki. And I'm just going to center that right on my card front. And so now I've got those nice layers of the polished pink, the evening evergreen, and then the basic white cardstock showing through on the front. And then on the inside, I am just going to again use my seal, create an angle, and center that on the inside of my card here. And voila, we are done. So again, just I fell in love with this layout, and I just haven't come back and used it. One other thing I was going to do with this card is I'm using the opal rounds to add a little dimension. Forgot about that part. So let me pop a couple of those on. grab one big one and put it down there. Okay. I love that iridescent, and I think it picks up the colors around too. So it just adds a little pop to the card. So anyhow, we've got a birthday one, a congratulations, maybe somebody's starting a new job, something like that. This is using those iridescent pearls. And then I've got the Christmas themed one using the boughs of holly. And again, this is all retired designer series paper, but it was a sample that I had made, and I didn't want to not share it with you because I think it still turned out to be a pretty card. And then He's the Man designer series paper, so you can create a masculine card, a holiday card, a congratulations type card, a birthday card. Very, very simple layout. Basic measurements again are 5.5 by 8.5, scored at 4 1/4. This is the 4 by 5 1/4 that you frequently will put on the inside of cards. Each of these little squares is 1 1/4 by 1 1/4. You need 8 of those. The evening evergreen layer here is just simply 5 3/8 by 4 1/8, and then the basic white layer is 4 by 5 1/4. I just went down by 1/8 increments. And then this polished pink layer matte is 2.5 by 2.5. Basic white is 2 1/4 by 2 1/4. And then however you're going to decorate the front, you'll need to include those. So very easy layout, easy to put together. I do recommend using the liquid glue so you've got a little bit of moving time on those little squares, but very simple card. So there you go. Thank you everybody again for joining in tonight. I hope that as we hit the holiday weekend next week and festivities start occurring this week, that everybody has a great holiday, however, whatever you celebrate. And we will see you next week, December 26th, with another video card tutorial. Stay safe, everyone. Bye-bye.